Have you ever felt an intense reaction to something that was happening in the present moment, but that reaction didn't seem to match the current situation? Have you ever felt like you were reliving something old, as if you were responding to something from the past, even though nothing currently is going on that's as dangerous as it was back then? Well, of course you have. We all have. And that's what's called an emotional flashback. And in today's video, we're going to dive into how emotional flashbacks work, what they reveal about past trauma, and most importantly, how you can transform those triggers into healing. Because isn't that what we're all here for? Yes. So welcome, friends. My name is Prema McKeever. I'm a somatic therapist, and I love teaching about all things related to our nervous system and our psychology, and how that together they imprint how we live and move through the world. So let's start with what is an emotional flashback. By definition, it's those sudden, intense emotional responses that we experience when something that is currently happening resembles close enough a past overwhelming, traumatic, or difficult experience. Now, unlike a visual flashback, as can happen very commonly in PTSD, emotional flashbacks are primarily emotional or physiological. There's often no clear memory attached. It can be something as simple as you feel panicked during a small or mild argument that you have with a significant other because it may unconsciously bring up feelings from a past toxic relationship or your childhood, or something like, for instance, your boss may use a certain tone of voice with you that somehow triggers feelings of being spoken to in a certain way by one of your parents. It's these things that are just these current situations. They're not exactly like the past, but there are flavors of the past that are coming through in our present moment experience. And so, one of the reasons why is that trauma, as you probably know, is stored in our body and in our nervous system. And this trauma creates imprints in us that shapes our reactions to current situations. Our brain is wired to remember negative or difficult experiences. It's one of the things that helps protect us, that's helped our species survive for thousands and thousands of years. And so when we have something that is currently happening that is similar enough to a past difficult experience, it can trigger this danger alert response inside of us. It can activate what's known as our flight or flight network, our sympathetic nervous system. And when that happens, these emotional flashbacks push us into a survival state, even when the present situation isn't truly threatening. And I think this is why it can get one, really confusing, and two, it can become very easy for us to judge or criticize ourselves when we're having one of these emotional flashbacks, because we can be like, why am I over responding like this? Why am I taking this so hard? Why am I finding all of a sudden I can't really think clearly? So, one of the first things we need to do is recognize when we are in an emotional flashback. And the clearest way to do that is to see when we're all of a sudden overtaken by feelings such as anger or shame or sadness, and that these feelings seem quite a bit bigger than what the current situation is calling for. When this happens, we often have difficulty staying in the present moment. You may start to notice that you feel kind of zoned out or dissociated, or that you have a childlike feeling of helplessness or panic. And so, one, developing awareness, being able to recognize, okay, this is a trigger, this is an emotional flashback. Some of the really common ways this happens is when we feel perhaps ignored or rejected or criticized. Those are usually really kind of big triggers for emotional flashbacks, because so many of us experience so much pain around that as when we were children, that when our current adult situations resemble that, we can go back into that childlike state when things were really overwhelming. So, first thing I will say is, when these strong emotional experiences come up, we need to pause. We need to be able to pause and reflect on whether that reaction feels disproportionate to the current situation. And that's important because that can help us shift regions of our brain. We can go more from that limbic reptilian threat response system more into our medial prefrontal cortex that helps us bring that witnessing back on board. Another way to recognize when emotional flashbacks that might be happening is your body response. How does your body physically respond when you have one of these triggers? Quite often we have tight muscles, something might get really tight in our jaw or our chest. Our heartbeat might speed up. It's really common for our breath to become a little bit shallow. Really common to have feelings of nausea come up. Oftentimes people feel that there's like a sense of nausea, a sense of needing to curl in on ourselves. So, being able to recognize both the emotional and the physical signs are key to helping us start to slow things down and be able to recognize when we're in an emotional flashback. And by slowing things down, we can start to shift out of the trigger and start to come into more awareness. We start to be able to shift out of going into that sympathetic fight or flight or kind of more that shutdown state into more of a place of present moment awareness. Now, in this, what's really important is grounding, starting to work with our body and working with our breath. Grounding is one of the best techniques I know to help shift the nervous system back into the present moment in a pretty quick amount of time. So, one of the ways that I like to work with grounding is when there is something overwhelming starting to feel like it's coming up and happening, is to take a moment and start to literally sense your feet on the ground. Start to connect in the sensations with your feet, the sensations in your legs. If you're sitting, noticing your weight, noticing the weight of your hips on the chair, feeling the contact between your hips, the back of your thighs, maybe your low back to whatever it is you're sitting on, shifting the awareness down into your body, into the lower part of your body, the part of us most connected to the earth. Another great way to help us shift our nervous system is our breath. Our breath, I think, is one of the fastest technologies we have for creating a nervous system shift. And so when we want to slow things down, we want to help us calm and recenter ourselves, we want to take a nice, easy inhale and then a long exhale. Diaphragmatic breathing. Nice, easy inhale and a long exhale. If you know box breathing can also be helpful. And if you don't know these different types of breath techniques, go to my website, permamckeever.com, and you can download a free ebook I have there that walks you through 5 different breath practices. So, diaphragmatic breathing, nice, easy inhale, long exhale as if you're breathing out through a straw. And you want to do this for about probably 3 to 5 minutes. Nice, easy inhale, long exhale, literally breathing out through a straw. This helps activate our vagus nerve and can really help us start to calm and center and being able to calm when we're experiencing an emotional flashback and having some tools on board to help us manage some of the emotional overwhelm can be really, really helpful. So let's go over some of these things. Again, first step, recognize, being able to pause, notice the reactions we're having, and be able to label it as an emotional flashback. Oh, okay, this is what's happening to me right now. Step two, grounding. Again, grounding, feeling your feet, feeling your legs, feeling your seat on the chair, or working with your breath with that slow, deep breath. That's step two, helping your brain shift out of overwhelm back into more self awareness. Step three, self compassion. So let's take a moment and pause here. Emotional flashbacks are survival responses, they're not a personal failure. And oftentimes, we can view it as a personal failure when we feel like we have over responded. Yes. And we need to be able to have a self compassionate holding of ourselves in these moments. We can recognize this is coming out of a pain from my past. I'm hurting right now. And I'm hurting partially because of my past and part of what's happening here in the present moment. And so being able to put a hand on our chest, yes, being able to have a moment of compassion for ourselves when we recognize, okay, this is due to some old material that's coming up again. So rather than beating myself up in this moment, can I meet myself here? Can I be with myself with this? I'm going to guess that chances are when you were younger, whatever caused that original pain and hurt, you weren't met there. Nobody really held you in those moments. And to be able to meet ourselves and be able to start to hold ourselves in those moments is a beautiful doorway back into healing. So we want to be able to slow things down, recognize the emotional trigger, come to our body, work with grounding, work with breath, bring self compassion to ourselves. And then we want to start working with reflection. We want to start journaling, writing, track your triggers, track what's going on. It can be so helpful to write when you're having an emotional response. Yes, this can help identify some patterns. And then once we have that, we want to get support. I really want to encourage you to seek out coaching or therapy or whatever methodology you like to do some of the deeper trauma healing work, especially if it's somatic or trauma informed approaches. Biodynamic breath work, a wonderful way to start to work with your body to release some of that traumatic energy from the past. Path of love, an amazing way to step forward into huge amount of growth. But whatever your way is, to start to work with what is going on in the past that is still impacting so much of today. Because truth is, triggers are teachers. Yes. And these emotional flashbacks are opportunities for healing. Each trigger has a way it can provide insight into what's unhealed inside of us. And it can be a painful but really important guide for where deeper work is still needed. And over time, as we work with our flashbacks, as we work with our emotional patterns, we actually build resilience. We build more capacity to stay present. We build more capacity to go into the past and reclaim those parts and integrate those parts that are stuck in the trauma of the past back into the present moment. And this allows us to be in the present moment, allows us to be able to respond to current challenges with more clarity, more empowerment, more groundedness. So, working with our traumas is actually an incredible way to come more fully into life now and to live the life that we actually want to be living. So, quick review. We want to understand our triggers. We want to find somatic ways or ways with our breath to be able to stay present, come back into the present moment. And we want to have self compassion for ourselves so we can start to meet these parts inside of us that have been hurt. Yeah, and then we want to keep learning and growing. So I invite you, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more content on healing, emotional well being, personal growth. And the next time an emotional trigger comes up, try a grounding technique. Yeah. Try one of the breath practices from my ebook. And if you do, I really encourage you share your experience in the comment below so we can all learn from each other. Because remember, we all we all have emotional triggers, and these reactions are not a sign of weakness. They're actually opportunities for healing, but we have to meet them. So, by understanding and working through these emotional flashbacks, you get to transform your triggers and find greater peace in your daily life. So, thank you for joining me in this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Love to continue the conversation with you. Thank you so much. Bye for now.